Run a whole society like that takes a lot of doing. It takes us really changing the values of the society. I think you can change the values of the society by creating a movement to struggle against the kind of society we have today, where people accumulate masses of wealth, guard it with violence, and deny it to other people. And as we fight against those people, and it will be a fight, because nobody in the history of society has ever given up their wealth and power without a fight. But if we take over that capitalist system and redistribute power, socialism is not exactly about redistributing. Sometimes people think you create a pot of money and everybody give $1 million, give $1 million people $1. Mm-hmm. It's not really about that. It's about redistributing the power so that the society as a whole can decide how we use that money. Maybe we wouldn't use any of it for individuals. Maybe we use some of it to build a hospital, some of it to build a school, some of it to build a highway. Mm-hmm. As you should have rights on the job to a job. But you should have a voice in the workplace. People should have a voice on the decisions that happen in their workplace. What's produced, how they're produced, how we work to produce it. Those shouldn't be decisions made by one individual. And those one or two individuals often make decisions that are bad for our society. So in addition to the representative democracy, I also think we need a participatory democracy, and particularly democratic rights in the workplace. Today we fight for those through labor unions, and labor unions have done a lot of good historically, but the labor movement needs to be strengthened, and labor unions themselves are not really adequate to answer all of these issues that we need to speak to about power in the workplace. Today we live in a capitalist system which means that a very small percentage of our country, a handful of people in our country, we could say 5%, own most of the wealth of the nation. They own it in the form of stocks and bonds. They control the corporations. And they make all the important decisions of our country. That's the capitalist system. It's a system that is a system that generates more social inequality. It's a system of periodic crises. That is, every 5 to 10 years or so, the capitalist system goes into a recession or depression. Millions of people lose their jobs. People's hopes and plans are destroyed. Sometimes families fall apart because of that. There are cases of family abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, divorce, all of which become worse because of those crises. So that's what capitalism means. Capitalism is also a system that is constantly trying to expand to control the world's economic resources. So with the capitalist countries like the United States go to war overseas to get oil. That's really what the Iraq War is about, is controlling oil in the Middle East. They go to war overseas to control coal, to control iron, to control, and sometimes to take over nations with agricultural products, to control rare minerals, which is becoming a real question with regard to China, that China has so many of the world's rare minerals. So capitalism is constantly generating wars as well. So unless we end the capitalist system, we face economic crises, we face war, we face growing numbers of people living in poverty, such as we have today. We have a system which, and also we might point out, the United States is now beginning to lose the war for competition in the capitalist system. That is, we can see that China will become the world's greatest capitalist power. So I think this is a system we don't want to be part of. We want to create an alternative, and that alternative, I think, is democratic socialism, where we say the people will control what are today the banks, insurance companies, and privately owned corporations. We should make the big decisions, and I think if we do that, we can plan for a system which will take care of people's needs. I often said during my campaign, today everything revolves around some CEO at the top of some big corporation who's a multimillionaire, and everything's to make him richer. Let's say instead we're going to think about a working class woman who's got a couple of kids and say we're going to make her life better. How do we make her life better? Let's always start with her. She will need a good job at a living wage. She has to have a good job at a living wage, not a crummy, our minimum wage today is not a living wage, and everybody knows that you can't live on that. People need to be paid $15 or $20 an hour to begin to have a living wage. We need to have that woman's kids have free education. It was possible in this country in the 1960s when I went to school. When I went to school in California, education was free from kindergarten through college, as far as you wanted to go, through graduate programs. Free public education. We had it in this country, in New York and California and a few other places. We could do that again. And we should do that. If you're going to take care of that woman with a couple of kids, her kids should have free education. That woman should be able to step out of her door and catch a bus to work. A good public transportation system, that bus would take her to a train or take her to a light rail system, or if she has to commute to another city, to a rapid rail system, like many countries do. And we don't have that today. And we see today, I feel terrible when I see, and it's now winter, there's snow on the ground out here, and I feel terrible when I see all these people standing waiting for a bus that doesn't come for 45 minutes or an hour or something on a weekend. So we could have and even on the weekdays, that might not come for 15 minutes or half an hour in the freezing cold. We can have a much better public transportation system. We can take care of people. We can move them rapidly. We can have reliable buses, and all of that. May be reasonable to have a 10-minute wait, but the buses have to be reliable. There have to be more of them. They have to actually take you someplace. There has to be a deep network of them so they connect up with other transportation. And we're not doing that today. So all those things that woman needs, the education, the housing, the housing, I didn't even mention that. This woman needs a place to live. The woman with a couple kids that she's raising as a working class woman needs a place to raise her kids. It's a decent apartment or house that's in what all of us would consider a healthy, sound neighborhood. And all of our neighborhoods would be healthy and sound if everybody had the health, education, housing, and public transportation they need. It's the nasty competition in our society. It's the vicious cruelty of capitalism that breed and generate all the things we associate with poverty and crime and so on. And we could do away with those. But we have to change from the capitalist system of competition, enriching a few, to a socialist system that's democratic and takes care of everyone. One, it seems to me, the alternative is the one that you pose in your question. People often said, why didn't you run as a Democrat? Then you could have got elected. No, I couldn't, because if I ran at first, I would have to go talk to the Democratic Party organization to get their endorsement, and I'd say, I don't agree with a thing that President Obama is doing. I'm against the wars that are going on. I'm against the way he saved the auto companies but didn't save the auto workers. I'm against the way he saved the banks but didn't stop the foreclosures on people's houses. They would be pretty clear. I don't agree with any of the program in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both corporate parties. And those two corporate parties represent the banks, they represent the corporations, they represent the insurance companies, they don't represent the American people. So I, as a socialist, would find myself immediately at loggerheads with the Democratic Party. Now, I could go in there and sort of lie and be deceptive and say, oh yes, I'm just a nice liberal. And I might be able to win a nomination in that way. But if you begin to lie there, where do you not lie next? Do I then go out and lie to the people of the state a little? I think that socialism has to be a conscious decision where people become aware of what's going on in our country. They see what's going on with the economy. They see how the banks and the corporations and the insurance companies behave. And so therefore, they decide, we don't want that anymore. We think we ought to put these corporations out of business and absorb them into the American society. That those corporations ought to be absorbed and controlled by the American people. And I think that so therefore I don't think you can do that. Now, there was also the possibility of running as a Green. And I have respect for the Green Party on a national basis and here in the state of Ohio, and I'm glad to see the Green Party is on the ballot to the left of the Democratic Party on so many issues. But I feel the Green program only goes part way to dealing with the issues. That is, I don't think you can solve the problems of the United States as long as we have privately owned corporations and banks and privately owned insurance companies, that those have to become social institutions controlled by the people. So while I respect and admire the Green Party for much of their platform, I didn't feel I could run there. On the Democrats, I wouldn't consider it, because I don't want to become another lying mouthpiece for the corporations. It goes out and tells the American people things that aren't true. And that's what the Democratic Party does.
Okay. And I
up is a big problem because people become blackmailed by this notion. Well, I have to vote for the Democrat because the Republicans are even worse. Well, the Republicans are always worse. The Republicans are even more in favor of the banks and the corporations than the Democrats. So the Democrats only have to be a tiny bit better, which is to say awful, and people still feel they have to vote for them. So they become blackmailed. And that kind of political blackmail is very awful. And we have to win people away from that. We have to win them to support the idea of a third political party to the left of the Democrats.